Welcome back to the build stage. Coming up now, we have using your past to inform your future, activating your current user journeys to build new product features. We're really excited to have joining us today, Jeremy, who's the CEO and co-founder at Indicative, and Alex, VP of Growth at Indochino. We are hoping to have some time for some live Q&A, so please do not be shy. Send in those questions via that chat feature you see in your right-hand corner. And then we also have a live poll going on in this section. So you can also see that poll with the red dot highlighted. Please go ahead and share your thoughts in that poll now. I know, Jeremy and Alex, you have a lot to cover, so I'm going to hand things over to you to get started.
Thanks very much, Lena. So welcome to our session, Activating Your Current User Journey to Build New Product Features. During this session, we're going to cover 4 topics: uncovering the customer journey, informed intuition, new applications for data, and what to consider before using product analytics. Before we get started, I want to give you a brief background on myself and on Indicative. My name is Jeremy Levy, and I am the co-founder of Indicative. Indicative launched in 2014 and is a product analytics platform that is built to connect directly to a company's data warehouse. Indicative is used by product managers to analyze complex behavioral data without the need for SQL or writing code, to increase customer engagement, conversion, and retention, ultimately to help our customers build better products. I do note that Indicative has a virtual booth at the Modern Data Stack Conference, so please stop by if you have a moment. I'm very excited to welcome Alex, who I'm excited to speak with today. Great to see you, Alex.
Thanks, Jeremy. It's great to be here.
Alex, before we jump into the questions, maybe we could just talk briefly, just give us a little bit out of your background, and then also tell us about what is Indochino and what does Indochino do?
For sure. So I'll start off talking a bit about Indochino, actually. So Indochino was founded in 2008, and the idea was to bring something to the North American market that there had never been before, which is the ability to buy completely custom made-to-measure suits and to be able to do the entire process online. So, traditionally made-to-measure has been a bit of a maybe snobbier, sort of stuffier business in the past, and we wanted to take that and completely turn it on its head. And it was very well received. And fast forward to today, Indochino has, in addition to the website, which has been going this whole time, a retail network of over 80 showrooms where people can go in, get measured, and then get their suit shipped directly to them. So we offer made-to-measure suits, shirts, formal wear, business casual, and we're even looking to expand into some casual wear.
So Alex, you were previously the director of e-commerce before transitioning to become the VP of growth. What are the areas that are in your area of responsibility?
Right. So in my new role, Jeremy, I head up the e-commerce team still, as well as the marketing team and the product development and inventory team. So we control a pretty significant segment of the customer journey, from getting them to the website or into the showrooms to determining what they buy and making sure that it's available for them.
So you recently purchased Indicative to help Indochino get better insight into customer behavior. Maybe to help set the stage here, you can help us understand how product analytics and data as far as product operated prior to deploying a more modern data stack.
Absolutely. So before implementing Indicative, we had a very basic data stack, I would say, and to some degree we still do, which we can get into later. But right now, essentially, or prior to Indicative, we use Google Analytics predominantly. And then we have all these other events that we wanted to track that we couldn't do through GA. So essentially, we use Snowplow as an event tracking tool for both of our retail app and our website for some more detail on that. All of that event data was then pushed into our data warehouse, Amazon Redshift. And then essentially, we just needed our BI team to query that database for us and pull up the data anytime we wanted to use it. So we're basically running all of our, a lot of our data insights, customer order history, behavior, drop-off, conversion funnels through Excel. Pretty basic stuff.
So I just want to harp on this for 1 second. Prior to sort of deploying a modern stack of Snowplow, Redshift, Indicative, and so on, you were doing what I think a lot of companies were doing, which is using Google Analytics in a sort of very basic way. And then also for anything more advanced, you guys, I believe you told me earlier, were really just crunching numbers in Excel or Google set spreadsheets and so on to get access to insights.
That's exactly it. So we were totally at the mercy of whatever data that we could scrape together from various systems. And the advantage of being an e-com first business is kind of a privilege because you have all this data available to you, but you've got your product data, your consumer data, you've got your digital analytics over there, and none of it really tied together. Or if it did, it was a very manual and laborious effort.
So I'm curious, what prompted this transition? I mean, everyone talks about this idea that, hey, let's be data driven. Selling it up the food chain isn't always easy. What triggered this initiative? Did you have to sell this up sort of the food chain to get this approved? Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that process.
Yeah, sure. So our previous CRO, Peter Housley, was a data fanatic, I would say. And a lot of people on our e-com team, obviously, but on our marketing team as well, we're all very data driven. And he kind of saw the writing on the wall. There's all these people who want to use data better to do their jobs. How do we give that to them effectively? And so what we did is, it wasn't too hard to convince him that we really needed to get on board with something like Indicative, where we could properly bring together our data, visualize it, and get some new insights.
And just out of curiosity also, did the timing of sort of this initiative also correspond with sort of the digital transformation around COVID, or did that help prompt sort of some of these initiatives?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, with Indochino, we've always been a very digitally focused business, but then, COVID just amplified that. And it makes you look inwards when you're going through this. Like, a good many people haven't worn a suit or a blazer for 18 months at this point. So then you really want to look inward and see who are the customers who still are. What are they doing? What is the content that they're consuming? And, more critically, where are they dropping off in the process? So all of this sort of pointed to, we need to be able to marry together our, event data online, event data in store, digital analytics, customer data, lifetime value, and purchase history. So that's sort of what led us here.
And, one of the unique things about your business is that it's really built on the made to measure experience with a retail component. And maybe you could talk to us about how the fact that there's an online presence in conjunction with that you have actual stores, how that impacts data collection, how you're storing data, and then ultimately how a data warehouse helped to unify or bring those together.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a little bit unique in that, well, it's similar to most companies in that I would say our website is the first touch point for the vast majority of our customers far and away. But then what we really want is we want to be able to serve you, the customer, give you like that made for you experience. We can deliver that so well in stores. But once you've got your measurements, it's so much easier to go buy, another couple of shirts, a pair of pants, like a new suit, and any number of our other categories. And the most efficient way for you, the customer, to do that is to just come back to our website. So we want to make sure, we wanted to look at, and before we were kind of looking at, well, here's the retail customer over here. They go in the store, they buy their suit. And then here's the online customer, they're going online buying their suit, but it's not really like that. It's one customer, one journey, and then retail and online are just two different sets of touch points. So that was really what we wanted to see is, what are those touch points? How are they behaving in relation to retail and e-com, and how can we best serve them?
Got it. So now you're at a place today where all this data is being unified into a data warehouse by way of Snowplow, and I assume bringing the point of sale information into your data warehouse, and you have a singular source of truth, and you're leveraging Indicative because Indicative can connect directly to the data warehouse and be set up easily. Can you help us understand sort of how this transformation has now impacted the decision-making process now that you have this data at your fingertips? And in a moment, I'm going to ask you maybe about some examples too, to give you a heads up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, sounds good. It's completely changed the way that we use data. In the past, again, we were at the mercy of a couple of people just being able to dump data to us at their discretion. We don't really have the luxury of waiting around for that. I think everyone gets impatient, and it's easy to steer away from being data centric. And more importantly, like you kind of lose your bearings. If you've got a question in the heat of the moment, it's much better to be able to go in, like test that hypothesis or see if you can find data to support or negate it right away. And then that opens the door to more questions and to like getting that discussion going and making the case to make a change. So it's really almost democratized our data, like certainly made it a lot more accessible. So before, unless you had like SQL skills, you weren't pulling any data out of anything. And now suddenly anyone on our marketing team, anyone on our e-com team, no matter how technologically advanced they are from that perspective can easily grab the data. So you'll get someone who might be a new person on the team saying, hey, like this particular group of customers, look how they came to the site versus this group, or these ones consumed A, B, and C before going into store. Maybe we need to set up, a marketing funnel in that direction. So it's kind of really changed how we talk about data and how we talk about our customer, for that matter.
So it sounds like there's sort of two aspects. One is the democratization, in the sense that groups within the organization either didn't have access to or didn't have the skills necessarily to be able to get value from data. And now that anyone can essentially go and ask questions around how your customers are interacting across the digital and the offline touch points. Can you give us some examples, perhaps, in terms of how that has influenced certain decision-making processes, or even how has that impacted your product now that you have this type of visibility?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say one of the things that we had always suspected when I joined the e-com team was that our cart could be a lot better. And our shopping cart had been the same for a number of years, and we just felt that there was room to optimize it. But we, in totality, we couldn't quite pull the data together. And, once we start visualizing things using indicative, we were able to pull together a funnel really easily that showed, okay, this many customers come in at one end of the shopping cart and this many are coming out the other end. And we were shocked to find that it was only a small fraction that were making it through. And we're like, oh my God, this is wild. Like, we are spending all this time and effort getting people to the checkout page, and only a fraction of them are actually giving us their money, So it pulled this up, and it's funny because the previous e-com director had the same hunch, but again, they weren't ever able to quite get it across the line. So we had all these plans already drawn up, like from a user experience standpoint, we had wireframes, we had everything except a business case. So it kind of helped me just take this whole project that had been gathering dust and, say, hey, give it a new lease on life. Like, guys, we need to move on this. Like, if you can do nothing else for me before Black Friday, we need a new shopping cart. And seeing the data, I mean, it gave the e-com team a sense of urgency, but it also gave the other teams urgency too. The marketing team rallied behind it. Our IT team was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like, we need to get this done for you. And, we really hustled to make this our top digital priority over this summer. And, just a couple of days ago, we launched our brand new shopping cart. So well in advance of Black Friday, and we couldn't be any happier with it.
So you've already launched the new version of the shopping cart?
We did, yeah. We were going to launch it today, actually, but it was ahead of time. As you can see, everyone was really invested in getting this done before Black Friday. So, yeah, it's been live for a couple of days now.
I'm impressed. So, data-driven and delivering projects ahead of schedule. We're going to have to do another webinar to find out the other tricks here. I don't suppose you have any data or metrics that you could share to help us understand or quantify the ROI associated with this change in the shopping cart.
Yeah, I mean, I can't go too much into specifics, but looking at the amount of customers that entered the cart, we're seeing something like a 10 to 20% increase in those that make it through to the next stage. And that was a huge drop off, huge pain point for us. And it killed us from a marketing standpoint, like to spend all this money pushing customers to convert and not going through. And to give you an idea, I mean, it's important, obviously, with all your traffic, you want to be converting it as efficiently as possible on the website, but it has so many other knock-on effects. And I think that's the other place that having more accessibility of data comes into play. Because then once this goes live, we've got a significant amount of data behind it, you get this positive halo effect. One change so close to the point of sale where the money changes hands affects all these other things. Like, it affects your cost per acquisition, your cost per order for marketing. So in turn, it makes it easier for the marketing team to get more budget for a given channel. It also instills a sense of confidence in the IT team that we're not just throwing something at a wall and seeing what sticks. I think it's very easy to fall into that. We need this now. Don't ask questions, just do it. And it allows us instead to engage our IT team as partners and, show them why we want to do it. And, they get it. And I think when everyone's really invested from that same point of view, it helps you all be like working toward the same goals.
So you touched on this notion a moment ago when you said you always had a hunch, and that the e-com team also always had this sort of idea about there was an opportunity here. And it touches on this notion that you talked to me when we were doing our prep for this, and I love it. I'm going to repeat it here, which is this notion of informed intuition. I'd love it if you could tell us what is informed intuition, and then how does that factor into understanding all the items in your backlog that gets,
Sure.
and how data help prioritizes though. So maybe let's just start with what is informed intuition.
For sure. So to back up a step, what Jeremy had asked me was, well, the age-old question about your data. Do you lead with the data? Like, do you let the numbers tell you where to go? Or do you use the numbers? Like, do you kind of follow the data and use the numbers to validate your hunch? And I said, it's kind of a mix of both. Like, it is this idea of informed intuition. So the thing about data is it's only as good as you are curious about it. And there's so many different stories you can tell with it. And there's so many rabbit holes you can lose yourself down. So none of this does any good unless you've got a defining vision of really where you want to go. And once you know where you want to go, it's very easy to lay out in black and white terms. Do the numbers support where I want to go? Or do we need to take a detour? Do we need to choose another path? Do we need to adjust our course? So informed intuition is you want to start with where your gut feeling tells you to go, but you want to make sure that you back it up with data. And the other reason that I really like this approach is it keeps everyone engaged, because if you're just waiting to pull up a pivot table, or even the nicest visualization, for someone who's maybe a little less used to working in data, or who doesn't envision their future to be pulling huge data sets and pivot tables all day, it can be overwhelming, or it's not your point of interest. So going on intuition lets you have that creative spark, and it's such a good jumping off point for the team. Like even the other day, someone's like, hey, have we ever thought about changing up this happened actually since we talked, Jeremy, like, have you ever thought about changing up the buttons on the PDPs to add something to help customers who might be interested in going in store to, nudge them in that direction? Or like, instead of saying yes or no, it's like, well, let's think about it. What would we need to find out to validate that? And then, it sends the team off. We go do our research and we either plow ahead with it, make the case, or we switch course.
Do you guys, so first off, I love that. I'm going to steal that notion of informed intuition and use that in other talks that I give, but I'll give you credit. Is there a product development methodology that Indochino subscribes to? And what I mean by that is some companies religiously follow A/B testing. Some companies more do what you're describing, I think, in terms of operating based on both intuition and gut, and sort of an art and combined with science. I'm curious to know if there's a philosophical approach to using data that you follow or that Indochino subscribes to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit of both. I mean, to me, it really depends on the project. Like, your mileage may vary. If there's something that you as a company have said, like, as a group, we are invested in this, we want to see this through, then it's really about, we know we're going to implement it. It's kind of a foregone conclusion. Then you would want to look at it from a before and after perspective. So keep measuring that and determine the ROI retroactively. I think that, usually if it's something that the entire company is aligned on, it's so core to your company's ethos, or so obvious in the data, or so critical to a specific business mission, it's almost not worth doing the A/B test. Like, you're going to do it. So forget the A/B test, just go for it and measure after. A lot of stuff, most stuff is not that clear cut. So in that case, I much prefer to A/B test. I would say that if all factors are pointing ahead, like I want to be bold, but if it's a little more muddled, and let's face it, most things are a little ambivalent, right? A little ambiguous. I'm a bit of an incrementalist, so I love a good A/B test. And I know my team likes that too, because it kind of gives them the confidence to roll something out fully and say, okay, we know for a fact this does better. We regret nothing.
So in other words, like, just constant optimization, I think, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Iterating. Yeah, no, I very much feel the same way about how we work with our product. That is, we're always trying to improve little bits here and there, and collectively they have big impact. Shifting gears a little bit, Alex, now that you've have modern data infrastructure in place, now that you've democratized access to data, I'd love to talk about sort of what you're thinking about in terms of the future, in terms of where you're looking to apply this data into the future. Maybe it's personalization, looking at other trends in sort of product lines. Like, what are you guys thinking about in terms of the next things you're going to apply this information to?
Oh my God, the sky's the limit. So as I said, starting off ecom centric, we have reams of data. But even if you were prior, like a bricks and mortar retailer who started a website, there's still tons of data that you're sitting on. And like, essentially, we we scratched the surface, and this geyser of data came spouting up in a way that was accessible to, to our whole team. So listen, I can't overstate how much we've been able to do, like, as we are grouping together these sets of data, because it's what we all talk about it, right? Oh, we're siloed, like our groups are siloed, our data is siloed, we have siloed objectives, but for once we've got all the data poured into one section and like visualized in a way that's understandable to our entire team. Total game changer. We can see retail metrics, we can see digital analytics metrics, we can see customer history, the types of media that they've consumed, the channel mix that brought them to our website or into our showroom. And on top of all that, we can see things like cohort by cohort, things like what have they bought? What haven't they bought? And then from here, we're essentially looking at segmenting out by behavior. So you're exactly right, Jeremy. It's all about personalization. Personalization might get a bit of a buzzy rep, especially in e-com occasionally, because everyone wants to do it. And it's often a little harder to implement than we all think at first blush. But having this data, we can actually prove that what we're doing, we can identify behaviors, they're correlated, and then we can prove the ROI after the fact. So I'm really looking forward to how do we use this as almost like to really inform our customer relationship management. And then of course, over time, like our lifetime value of our customer, how do we keep them coming back and happy?
So in terms of making this useful for our audience, I have a couple questions in terms of how you can help, or your advice for people who are beginning this sort of transition. I want to start though with end to end, from starting to setting up indicative and reaching sort of what maybe is sort of the first value milestone. How long did that entire process take?
It wasn't long, I don't remember, but it was even including like the data hygiene and data cleansing that running all sorts of tests on it. It was a matter of a couple of months. And I would say the bulk of that was really sanity checking our data. It was out of the box.
Yeah. That's a good sort of pivot point for my next question, which is, I love asking companies about who's responsible for data. And, I have sort of this thesis that as the tools that we're using around data become easier to use, that they are more and more moving under product side of the organization or the marketing side of the organization when it comes to data, as opposed to dedicated data teams. So I'm going to ask you the question, which is, who really owns data, or who owns different parts of the data stack within Indochino?
Right. Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, I'd say the data belongs to everyone. The data belongs to everyone who can access it. That's kind of what we're moving towards. With a big caveat, what I like about it is this. We still have our BI team. They live with our IT team, and they are in charge of making sure we've got rigorously collected data that is clean and ready and consistent and good for us to use. And that is an irreplaceable function. That's only going to get more important as time goes by and we get more data. But in terms of who really owns it, it's the same as, who's accountable for sales online or who's accountable for sales in store. If you have the data at your fingertips, to me, it's one and the same. So to me, it really is, if you can access the data, you can own the data, and you only own it insofar as you use it to influence your job, manage your boss upward, make the case for something you're really excited about. So that was a rambly answer, but yeah, I think if you can access it, you can own it.
No, that makes sense. So it sounds like there's a dedicated team who's responsible for the data engineering aspect, the hygiene aspect, but then
yes,
productizing
really complicated stuff that would be far above and beyond your typical business user. But really, they're empowering us to use it, and it frees them up to do more of that high level analysis and work with the data, and it allows us to be like, hey, online did they do this versus in store did they do that, and not bugging them for it. It's great.
Got it. So we have just a few minutes left, and I want to ask I think probably my final question here, which is for the people in our audience who haven't yet implemented a product analytics solution or are only getting started, are there some recommendations or best practices that you could recommend to help them on their data journey?
Absolutely. Coming back to informed intuition for a minute, I make sure you start with an endpoint in mind. Like, make sure you know what you want to get out of it. Just saying, I want my data to be visualized does nobody any good, and you're setting yourself up to spin in circles. We had a very clear understanding that we wanted to know a set group of outcomes from implementing indicative. And the team was very supportive in getting us there. But we were all focused in the same direction. We couldn't have got the impact out of it if we just said, oh, well, we want all our data and we want it in a visualize, we want it to be all stitched together. That does nobody any good. So make sure you start with an endpoint in mind. And also get everyone excited about it. I think where we're successful is, partly by coincidence, partly not, our whole team is very focused on the data, but it's about making it permeate everybody in your organization. And it doesn't have to be this intimidating thing. It can be a very casual part of the company culture. Every culture is different. And for us, it's, we try and make a concerted effort to toss around numbers and make sure that we're all aligned, or, hey, who knows what appointments are at, who knows what sales are at, but also how much traffic's coming in, or what was something like fun that you dug up while you were, doing your reporting yesterday. And keeping that spark of curiosity is the only way you're going to make it really work and get it over the line to the point where people are using it.
Were there any pitfalls that you would recommend, or that happened that you would recommend people to avoid?
I mean, I would say don't bite off more than you can chew. I'd say it's better to get if you've got a bunch of siloed data, maybe pick 2 that are most important to you, or even just 1, and get that working first. Make sure the data is clean, make sure it's ready to use. If you can show 100% success in one group, it's much easier to bring everything else in. And again, we're super fortunate. Our whole company is based around a culture of excellence and curiosity in data. But if your culture isn't quite there, that's not to say that it can't happen. It's just you want to show people the value of it and you want to get them excited.
Awesome. Well, Alex, thank you so much. I also want to thank the Fivetran team for having us. I want to remind people that if they haven't already, please visit Indicative at our virtual booth. And if you are in need of a custom-made suit, I would recommend Indochino as well. Thanks again, Alex. Thanks, Fivetran. And have a great rest of the conference, everyone.
Yeah, thank you both so much for that engaging presentation. I as well am excited now to go help my fiance get a suit for our wedding. So thanks. Just wanted to share what's coming up next on this stage here in a few minutes is we have Insights as a Service, creating data products from your customers' data. So please stick around for that. And thank you guys again. Have a good one.
Thanks. Bye.